Now here's a quick explanation of the answers in the last test that you took. Sorry about the bad light. So for 13, when R is 0, C goes from 0 to 0 and just one element, mat of 0 is 0, will be printed. When R is 1, C goes from 0 to 1 and 2 elements, mat 1, 0 and mat 1, 1 will be printed, and so on. When R is 3, all 4 elements of row 3 will be printed. 14 is answer C. So to return the number of elements in the set for method 1 requires no more than returning the number of elements in the array. For method 2, however, the number of cells that contain true must be counted, which requires a test for each of the max values. Note that searching for a target value in the set is more efficient for method 2. For example, to test whether 2 is in the set, simply check if A of 2 equals true. In method 1, a sequential search must be done, which is less efficient. To print all the elements in method 1, simply loop over the known number of elements and print. Method 2 is less efficient because the whole array must be examined. Each cell must be tested before printing. 15D. An arithmetic exception will be thrown at runtime. Note if n were of type double, no exception would be thrown. The variable sum would be assigned the value infinity, and the error would only be detected on output. Let's see. 16, I think I explained the interface should provide methods and declarations only, no code. Note that the methods are automatically public and abstract, so there is no need to specify this explicitly. Remember, Java 8, which is what Zybox is written off of, does allow implementation in an interface, but that's only for Java 8, and the test does not cover Java 8. All right, next one on the test is 21. So for 21, the segment 2 correctly checks that part of the description matches and keeps track of the current part with minimum price. If this is not done, the part whose number must be returned will be lost. Segment 1 is incorrect because it doesn't check that part description matches the description of the current part being examined in the array. Thus, it simply finds the auto part with the lowest price, which is not what was required. Segment 3 incorrectly returns the part number of the first part it finds with a matching description. 22. Statement 1 is fine. The parameters are string objects. Statement 2 will throw a class cast exception because an auto part cannot be cast to a string. Statement 3 will fail because part 1 and 2 are not comparable objects. 23. Ordering of strings involves a character-by-character comparison. Starting with the leftmost character of each string, thus string A precedes string B, since A precedes lowercase a, or string A compared to string B is less than 0. This eliminates choices B and D. Eliminate choices A and E, since string B precedes string C, because capital C precedes lowercase c, and therefore string B compared to string C is also less than 0. Note that string 1 compared to string 2 equals 0 if and only if string 1 and string 2 are equal strings. 24. The 3-digit code is a subclass of 3-digit integer and therefore inherits all the instance variables and methods of 3-digit integer except constructors. All the other statements other than B are false. For choice A, the 3-digit integer is the superclass and therefore cannot inherit from its subclass. It doesn't go backward. For choice C, the constructors are never inherited. For choice D, a subclass can access private variables of the superclass through the accessor methods only. For choice E, a superclass cannot access any additional instance variables of the subclass. 25. Implementation 2 is wrong because the constructor has no Boolean validity parameter. Implementation 3 is wrong because a subclass cannot access a private instance variable of the superclass. And 26C, a compile time error will occur for both tests 1 and 2 because at compile time, multiple types of code and num are both 3-digit integer, and the class 3-digit integer does not have an isValid method. To avoid this error, the code object must be cast to 3-digit code its actual type. Note that if you try to cast num to 3-digit code, you'll get a runtime error, a class cast exception, because num is not an instance of 3-digit code. (27, 28). The is a relationship of more right to left. A parrot is a bird, a parakeet is a bird, and an owl is a bird. All are correct. This relationship fails in declarations 2 and 3. A parrot is not necessarily a parakeet. A bird is not necessarily an owl, and a bird is not necessarily a parakeet. 28e. All three segments traverse the array, accessing one element at a time and appending it to the end of the array list. I think I wrote this. The middle one is sort of redundant, where the way it calls it, but it does work. In segment 2, the first parameter of add method is position list, where the next string s will be added. Since list size increases one after each insertion, this index correctly updated in each pass of the for loop. 29c. Suppose you want random integers from 2 to 8, that is low equals 2 and high equals 8. This is 7 possible integers, so you need int math random 7, which produces 1 through 6. Therefore, the quantity int math random 2 produces 2 through 8. The only expression that yields the right answer is int math.random high minus low plus 1 plus low. 30. Here's a box diagram for merge sort 0, 3. The boldface numbers 1 through 6 show the order in which merge sort calls are made. The merge sort calls in which first equals last are base case calls, which means that there will be no further method calls. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 34d. Suppose that a full name is Dr. John Rufio. In segment 1, the expression full name index of blank returns 3. The temp gets assigned the value of full name substring 4, which is John Rufio. Next, k gets assigned the value temp index of blank, namely 4, and first name gets assigned temp substring 04, which is all the characters from 0 to 3 inclusive, namely John. Note that segment 2 works the same way, except first name gets assigned John Rufio and then reassigned John. This is not good style, since a variable name should document its contents as precisely as possible. Still, the code works. Segment 3 fails because index of returns the first occurrence of a string parameter, thus first blank and second blank will both contain the same value, 3. That is one thing to be careful with the index of. If you don't chop it off, it just gives you the first one, unless you update some other thing. Okay? Then, our free response questions. First one is extract city. So, find the comma using index of and then return or either create a local variable, which again is how I recommend you do it. So you would say that this is a string, so I need to make some string comma equals, or string city equals 2 sets of quotes, an empty string. You have to initialize all variables and then return that variable. And here I would assign city equals city zip substring 0 comma position. But the idea is find the index of the comma position and use that in the substring. Public void print names, okay, the loop, and you can do this with a for loop, get the index of a space, because I said a space precedes is how you're going to delineate everything in this list, and then out system out print the part of the element of the array, next array, which is what you were looking for, which is the name. Update your index again. You can do this in a for loop. The trick is that you're never going to get the first line, because the first name doesn't have a space preceding it, so it's going to get skipped. So you have to hard code in the printing of the first line and then do your loop. All right, get address, create an index. Well, your index is less than your line size and your name does not equal the index, update your index. Create an empty string while your lines getting index does not equal the space, add it with a new line, update, and then return what you've created. All right, had a string, we made a string, initialized it empty, and returned it. All right, note in part B, the empty string signals the next element of the list will be a name. This is why you should be careful you don't miss the first one, which is index 0. Notice too, you can avoid the empty string at the end of the list by having index lines minus size minus 1 as a test in the loop. If you don't do this, the final will cause an out of bounds index exception. Part C first finds the name that matches the parameter and then builds a string out of the next 2 or 3 lines that comprise the address. Again, the empty string signals the end of the address has been reached. The escape character sequence /n inserts a break into the string. Summing the rows. Again, we got an integer, so you're going to need to make an integer and create it at 0 and then return it. And then loop through your column. Well, your column is less than the size. Add the row and that particular column to it. So row stays the same, column keeps going. So you're just going to go across your array. Sub minor diagonal, again create an integer variable and return it. Go I is less than size, sum my mat I size minus I minus 1 will get you the right part. And that, if you want to do the is magic, here's the answer to is magic. And that is your last help video for the year.